Okay, I think we'll get started. We're still waiting on a couple of councillors, which will hopefully join us very soon. Welcome everybody. Thank you to everyone who's come from the public. It's great to see quite a few of you. Firstly, if we sort of go round the members of the committee and all introduce ourselves so you know who we are. So I'm Abby Finch, I'm Councillor for St George Central and I'm Chair of the Environment and Sustainability Committee. And if we go round.
Councillor Kydad, Councillor for Southmead.
Councillor Kirsty Tate for Hartcliffe and Withywood Ward.
Councillor Tim Kent, Hengrave and Whitchurch Park Ward.
Councillor Martin Fodor, Redland Ward.
Councillor James Crawford, Bishopston Ashley Down Ward.
Councillor Izzy Russell for Ashley Ward.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Hello. Sue, do you also want to, we've just introduced ourselves, if you want to introduce yourself as well. Sorry to put you on the spot when you've just come in.
Hi, my name is Sue Collar and I am the Councillor for Bishopswood Ward.
Thank you, thanks. And then, if the officers are happy to, if you're happy to introduce yourselves as well, that would be great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's John Smith. I'm the Executive Director for Growth and Regeneration.
Great. Hello, I'm Alex Minshall. I'm Sustainable City and Climate Change Manager, and we'll also be joined in a moment by, for the right item, by Alex Ivory, who is Climate Change Team Manager, and we'll introduce that item when we get to it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Naomi Chatfield-Smith, and I'm Ecological Emergency Coordinator.
Hi, Anna Jones, Climate Change Coordinator.
Hi, Ken Lawson, Head of Waste and Neighbourhood Enforcement.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everybody. Just to note that this meeting is being webcast, so there may well be people watching it online as well. And for those who are in the room, just to outline the emergency evacuation procedure, if there is an alarm, we're not expecting any routine alarms, so we will need to evacuate. So if we leave the room calmly and then leave the building out of the lobby area and the main front door, and then if you turn right and walk down the ramp, and we will gather in front of the cathedral. And in the middle of the meeting, we're going to take a short 10-minute break as well. So there'll be an opportunity to get a glass of water or go to the toilet. Yes, and that's going to be just after the River Avon Charter item. So moving on to the second agenda item, are there any apologies for absence or substitutions today? We haven't been informed of any, but I note that Mark Weston isn't here at the moment. Yes. So I think that's everything. There are no substitutions. And then moving on to item number 3, declarations of interests. Do any committee members have declarations of interests? Yes.
Yeah, for item 7, I think I'll have to leave the room because I'm a trustee at Southmead Development Trust who are benefiting from the report.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm also declaring an interest, so I work for Heart of BS13. We've produced a community climate action plan, and I have that as an advocacy role against the other climate action plans, so I'll also be leaving with Kai on that one.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Great. And the decision isn't to allocate any money to the plans, but you're still very welcome to leave, if you feel more comfortable. So then on to agenda item 4, the minutes of the previous meeting. I would like to move the minutes of the previous meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Policy Committee that was held on the 4th of June as a correct record. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Amazing, thank you very much. And then could the committee confirm that they're happy to approve those minutes? Brilliant, I'm seeing nods from everybody and no objections. So yes, I will take that the minutes are approved. And do I need to sign? I'll sign straight away. Brilliant. Thank you very much. on to agenda item 5, which is Chair's announcements. A few announcements from me for today. I'll come on to that at the end. Yes. Firstly, I wanted to sort of acknowledge the extreme heat that we've been experiencing in recent weeks, and also, the wildfires we've been seeing in some areas of Europe in particular. Obviously that it shows us that the climate is changing, and it's really highlighted the need to adapt to the hotter summers that we're experiencing. There is a lot of work that's being done in Bristol and been done in Bristol already, including the Keep Bristol Cool mapping tool and framework, and we are developing a list of cool spaces in the city as well. But we're also aware that there's more to be done in this area as the climate is changing and the weather patterns are changing, and that's something that we've been continuing to discuss, and also with One City. So the One City boards are where key partners from across the city come together to discuss, various cross-cutting issues, and we have been having those conversations on the One City boards about how do we adapt to the changing climate and become more heat resilient as a city. And also on that note, I just wanted to flag, Kirsty suggested that we can also flag about the risk of fires in parks, especially with the conditions being really dry. And so just that ask for everyone to take extra caution, especially with disposable barbecues and things like that. And yeah, now is not a good time for lighting any sorts of fires in parks. I also wanted to, and I know we've got a public forum statement from Mark, who isn't here at the moment, on the waste and recycling collection disruptions that we've had recently. Firstly, apologies to anyone who has experienced any disruption to their waste and recycling collection over the recent few weeks. There have been a combination of issues, and it's largely because of the number of extreme heat events that we've had in the city, but also there's been other factors that have played in, such as driver shortages. Bristol Waste and Bristol City Council have learned really valuable lessons from the experience, and it's not related to issues we had in previous years about waste. This really is sort of a one-off incident, but because of adapting to the extreme heat. And looking ahead, Bristol Waste are recruiting more drivers, and also are looking at the way the service is managed in red weather events. A new plan is being developed for how we respond to red weather warnings. A couple of more positive things. There's a new exhibit at We the Curious, which is a Bristol City Leap themed exhibit in the North Gallery, and explores how low carbon energy and heat circulate. And I can confirm it's brilliant, so really recommend anyone going along to that. And also, as has been brought to us in another public forum question and statement, Room 13 Hairclive who are an award-winning independent artist studio co-run by children in Hartcliffe, have been commissioned by the University of Bristol to create a film called Rivers, A Race Against Time. I've watched it myself. I'd really recommend it. I know a couple of members of committee were at the launch of it. So yeah, really recommend watching that to anyone. And we've got a little clip for people to see as well.
Living life in wild spaces is pure magic. Damselflies like blue jewels, fish, maybe a heron or a cormorant. You'll be lucky to see a blue kingfish these days, but every nook and cranny is a tiny wild space for insects and life. We need you humans to take care of it all. You are part of the solution.
Thank you very much. Yes, so yeah. Yeah, and I really do recommend people watching the whole film. It's about 10 minutes long. So that brings us on to public forum. We've received 5 questions And the answers to those questions have already been issued. So we'll have a chance to hear a supplementary question from everybody who asked a question. And we've also had 5 statements. So anyone here who submitted a statement will have the opportunity to speak to their statement. And you'll be able to see all of the statements, questions and answers in the papers for this meeting. So, moving on to questions first, we had 2 questions from Councillor Ellie Freeman. Did you have any supplementary questions?
I don't, because you've gone above and beyond what I was expecting, so it's great to see the clip, and I think just, another vote to watch the film. Thank you. Brilliant, thanks, Ellie. And then we've also had 3 questions from Councillor Shona Gemfrey. Did you have any supplementary questions?
One was about the task and finish group that's coming up, which I think is really important, because residents around Stapleton Road are getting extremely fed up as is very reasonable. I have heard from Kurt today that we're going to explore gold-proof bags, which is great. Just about the task and finish group, could you clarify for residents sort of what that looks like, when that's going to be, and if they want to kind of submit information to that, is there a way they can do that, how they can feed into that?
Thanks very much for that question. So we have now voted at the last committee to establish that task and finish group, and Councillor James Crawford is going to be the chair. And as part of setting up the task and finish group, we agreed a scope. And within that scope, one of the meetings of the task and finish group is going to be looking at fly tipping. Obviously, it's a really broad topic, and so I'm sort of mindful of not wanting to make too many promises as to how much we can cover in that one session. But I think aside from that, there is a recognition from me as chair, and I think hopefully from the committee more widely as well, that there is a really particular issue in the area of Stapleton Road and Lawrence Hill and Easton, with that being the highest area for fly tipping in the city, and that needing addressing. So whether we can get into the detail of how we address that within the task and finish group or not, we will be looking at fly tipping in the task and finish group, and it will definitely be applicable to that area. But I think also there is the need to continue the work, and such as the Love Stapleton Road work, which is ongoing, to focus on that area. So yes, it definitely has our focus, but I don't want to make specific promises about the task and finish group and how much we'll be able to achieve in that one session. Thanks.
I think the more detail we can provide for residents, the more reassured they'll be that it's being taken seriously. My second question was just about, I think there's talk about an education campaign, and I suppose it's more a recommendation. I think residents are very keen that any education campaign around waste should be focused on like the schools and the community organisations and the faith organisations in the area, not relying just on billboards to change behaviour, which I think is the concern, as that's what's been seen to happen previously. So just, I suppose that's more feedback to ask the officers to take into consideration. I know they do a lot of hard work around this already.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And yeah, we'll definitely take that on board. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that until Ken.
Yeah, I think the Stapleton Road area, because of the groups of people we need to engage with, it definitely needs to be led through the community and through community groups and faith groups to really get traction and buy-in to solve the problem, well, solve part of the problem and set expectations about how you behave and interact with the council services.
Thanks very much, and thank you, Shona. So now moving on to public statements. We've received 5 public statements. I'm only aware of 2 people attending, but if you're here, and I'll go through all of them in order, just in case anybody's here that we weren't expecting. So is Jay Price here? No? Okay, so next we had a statement from Councillor Mark Weston, who also isn't here at the moment. And then we had Councillor Ellie Freeman. Would you like to speak to your statement?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously you've seen the questions about this as well, but just want to give Room 13 their moment to shine. It's such an important film. So I would like to let committee, council colleagues and the public know about this impressive film, which was scripted, directed, filmed and acted by pupils at Hartcliffe Primary School through Room 13. The studio is jointly run by pupils and resident artists who support them. I was lucky enough to attend the blue carpet premiere of the film at Hareclive E-Act Academy in Hartcliffe. They held a panel discussion as creators of the film, and they asked that we share this with friends and colleagues to get their message spread far and wide. You can see it online, and obviously you've got, the link is in my statement, but I think also you're going to share it as well. I'm bringing this statement to committee so it enters the record of the meeting, and so that the creativity, voice and call to action of Room 13 children and the Wild Spaces Commission itself can be seen and heard as much as possible. We are asked as adults to listen to them and to act. Today we can take a step towards that by noting the progress made towards clean rivers and also by supporting the proposal at committee to approve the charter for the Avon created by the authorities across the Avon watershed. We can show the children of Hartcliffe and beyond that we do listen, we care and we take their message and their future seriously. Please support the charter so that both the river and the life depicted in the film get representation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ellie. And next we have a statement from John Stansfield. Is John Stansfield here? Yeah, did you want to speak to your statement?
How do these mics work? Will they pick me up sitting?
They should pick you up, yeah.
Should I move a bit closer maybe? Oh, okay. All right. Okay to go? Yeah? Hello, everyone. Right. As irrefutable evidence of the growing effects of climate change, we are now seeing unprecedented fires engulfing huge areas of land across the globe. Animal agriculture is a major contributor to greenhouse gases, is almost uniquely responsible for an ongoing major extinction event, as well as a cause of widespread pollution, deforestation, and burgeoning human health problems. The World Health Organization, the Climate Change Committee, the Lancet, the World Cancer Research Fund, and others have been stressing the need for mankind's move to a much more plant-based diet. And this year, the UK government has produced no less than 3 major reports to the same effect. It is incumbent on decision makers from councils upwards to act on this and educate their citizens on the need for dietary change, the absence of which would be a dereliction of their duty. Their adoption of the plant-based treaty with its clear roadmap for dietary shift provides an excellent way to lead by example, as does adoption of the Plant-Based Council's initiative. Will this committee now agree to sign up to these movements and urge the full council to do likewise?
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And then the final statement we have is Eleanor Blanco, who I don't think is here today. What's that? Oh, yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, but we can go back to Councillor Weston's statement if you wanted to speak to your statement. Yeah. Thank you.
We've all got it, and you've read it, so I'll just talk briefly to it.
Great.
Essentially, I think everyone across the city is well aware of the extreme heat that we had, and I utterly commend the waste workers who have gone out with the waste company. They've done a lot of hard work, but I'm afraid to say there's been a failure of management when it comes to the waste company, and I think we need to call that out. To suddenly find yourself so short of drivers, unless they all simultaneously quit, or they're all simultaneously fired, then we have a problem of planning, of HR planning, and we shouldn't be in that predicament. And the fact that in BS10, so Southmead as well, along with Henry Brentry, took a month to recover, it's quicker at Christmas. You know, we had some people that didn't get waste collections, particularly food recycling, for 3 weeks. Our bins were rancid and literally crawling. Mine nearly waved to me when I walked in. And so I think we need to get a hold of the waste company. We need to stress to management this isn't good enough, that they should be taking preparatory action for this. And for the love of God, they need to manage their staffing levels better, because it was a fiasco. I commend the staff that ploughed on regardless and did sterling work, but actually overall, must do better would be the grade I would give. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Weston. And unfortunately, you missed the Chair's announcement where I sort of covered an update from that, but I can circulate it to you so you've got that as well. Yeah. And also, John, I realised you asked a question which obviously is a statement, so we didn't answer, but I would point you to look at the work of our new sustainable food task and finish group, which is going to be looking at the definition of sustainable food and then how we can better implement that in our councillor policies. And Councillor Izzy Russell is going to be chairing that. So yes, yeah, just to... I can't hear you, but yes, just to let you know that is happening. Brilliant. So that brings us to an end of public forum. So moving on, and yeah, thank you everybody who has contributed. So moving on to agenda item 7, which is the Community Climate Investment and Action Plans. And we have a couple of councillors leaving because of a conflict of interest. So this report presents the Community Climate Investment Plans for Eastern and Lawrence Hill, Knoll West, and Southmead, alongside 17 community climate and nature action plans developed with local communities across Bristol. And firstly, I'd really just like to recognise the level of work that's gone into developing these plans and to give a huge thank you to all of those groups and organisations that have been involved, and to Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership, and also the Centre for Sustainable Energy that have co-proposed those plans with the communities. Yeah, it's a huge amount of work, and we are incredibly proud and incredibly lucky as a city to have such engaged communities when it comes to climate and nature. And I'd also just like to thank the external funders who have made this work possible, so the National Lottery Community Climate Action Fund and the Innovate UK Net Zero Living Programme. Yes, yeah, so thank you so much to everybody who's been involved. So this report that we are seeing today asks the Environment and Sustainability Committee to endorse the plans as a valuable source of community insight, and to note that this endorsement doesn't approve the individual projects within them, but also to reaffirm Bristol City Council's support for community-led climate action, including working with relevant communities and city partners to help progress priorities where they align with council services, budgets and wider climate and nature recovery objectives. And just so you know, it's a non-key decision, and we'll take a vote at the end of the item and show the recommendations on the screen. But firstly, over to Alex Ivory, I believe, who's going to be introducing the report. Thank you.
Thanks. I've brought this item because, as Councillor Finch has just said, there are now 2 new types of plan available which show us what communities would like to see happening in their locale on climate and nature action. And the Council has had an involvement in these in one way or another. So as Councillor Finch has just said, they were funded by different external funders, but for the community climate and nature action plans funded through the lottery funding, we dedicated officer time to support that, and we are a supporter of Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership, who led that project. And for the second type of plan, the community climate investment plans, that was funded by the Innovate UK Fund Net Zero Living Programme, and that was part of a project called Mission Net Zero, which was led by the council, so we had a bit more involvement in that. As Councillor Finch said, CSE, the Centre for Sustainable Energy, worked with communities, and a number of partners led a work stream around that. And from our side, the lead officer is Anna Jones, who's here today as well. So just want to give credit and evidence that we've had officer time on that project. So we're slightly more involved in those, the second type of plans, and those are newly available. The Community Climate and Nature Action Plans, there are 17 now and growing. So those have been in the public domain for a while. But I think it's important, as these are all now available, that the Council has some response to them. So the recommendations relate to that. As you've summarised, endorsing them, noting that the endorsement doesn't constitute our approval for projects within the plans. If we were to develop projects that related to the plans, they would be subject to their own relevant decision pathways. So I'm not sure that councillors needed to step out for a conflict of interest, because we definitely won't be doing that today. We won't be deciding on whether to spend money on projects within the plans. But I think it is very important, as you say, to work with a community-informed plan, so that the things we propose, we can have some certainty that communities would like those things to happen. So yes, that reaffirmation of our continued support for that way of working, and we know that to be a successful way of working. It's very much seen as best practice nationally to work in that way. I'm glad that you pointed out the thanks to the organisations, because it does take a huge amount of effort, and yes, that point 15 in the report talks about that. And the point below, point 16, just shows where we think we might foresee supporting the implementation of the types of plans in two main areas: energy and home retrofit, which would link well with our own climate emergency action plan and our own warm homes plan, and our council homes decarbonisation strategy, but also, and importantly, links to potential funding that may be coming from the government, the warm homes plan and the local power plan. So we would be able to potentially work where resources became available. And the second area is on nature, and linked to the Nature Together project, because that, again, has resource attached to it, an implementation of our own council's ecological emergency action plan. I would say that it's not just the council that can use these plans. Any organisation could look at these and be informed about what communities want. And I think that they're really valuable because of that. They've got a great value in sort of giving that mandate. So if we or other organisations wanted to make a funding application, for example, I mentioned those couple of government funds, I think it would really strengthen those to know that you are working in concert with the community in alignment with what had been proposed. So yes, should again underline point 17 and 18, that action on these topics would be supported as resources allow. We're not saying here today that we are going to fund any of the ideas within these plans, but and they're a snapshot in time, so they're what communities wanted at the time of writing the plans, and it would be sensible to check back in for any organisation using these, to check back in with those communities before launching an idea. But yes, I think they're incredibly valuable, and I think those recommendations, to recap, to endorse them, to note those caveats about the resources that would be needed, but to reaffirm that way of working, I think is all very valuable. To your point around resilience, these plans don't so much feature resilience. The Community Climate and Nature Action Plans sometimes have elements of that because they weren't so restricted on what they could think about, but the Net Zero Living programme funded by Innovate UK was very much a sort of climate mitigation focused piece of work, so there's nothing particularly in there around resilience, although they do feature sort of home retrofit, which is all part of making your home more resilient in some ways, but not so much on the heatwave side of things. I think that's probably all I wanted to say, but if you have questions about it, I hope that we can answer them.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. Yeah, so open to members of the committee for questions and also any comments. Yes, Councillor Fodor.
Thanks, Chair, thank you, Alex. I think that was an excellent summary of how many threads that have been running through the work that you and your colleagues have done, our partners across the city have done, the communities themselves have done. they're not just nationally significant, I think. There's been international interest in the fact that climate action and climate investment isn't all top-down, it's bottom-up as well. And I think that's actually quite an important point to emphasise. If we want to recognise we need to make changes in the city and we need to affect the infrastructure, the homes, the lives, the places people live, we need their endorsement and their buy-in. And the fact that these plans show people want action, they want change, they want their homes improved, they want nature protected, they want things done that, whether it's to make travel easier, give them local access to local food, and so on. There are many wider benefits, and there are lots of ways communities are telling us these matter to us because there are jobs, skills, education opportunities, technical opportunities. And we did note previously the prospectus prepared by the Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership that said, here's a prospectus of some of the things some of these communities want to do. Those are opportunities for businesses, sponsors, away days by staff teams, people with equipment they could lend, all sorts of ways people can help work with communities to actually help them achieve it. It won't always either point to us or rely on us for funding. Lots of other people can support the action that people want, and that action is stuff we know needs to happen in the city. And as you said, it's got to be led by communities. We can check in with them as and when there are opportunities to do that. But there's an enormous amount of work and partnership, and I think it's something we can be proud of in Bristol. And the only question I would have is, can we come back to these at some point? You've drawn together all the threads that show all the different bits of work that have happened over the years on Nature Together and community climate plans, the net zero living and so on. Can we come back to this at some point, maybe in a year or something, and say what else is happening now, or where have we got to helping people to achieve what they want, and work with them, because we will be making changes in the city, and they're helping to achieve some of those changes and get what they need for their communities through all the benefits that they can gain in their places, in their workplaces, schools, homes, and so on. As you said, to be warmer, to be comfortable, to get shade, to live with nature, and so on. So I think it's a whole suite of work, and I hope we'll come back and we certainly shouldn't put this on the shelf, but we should look back on it and check in with the communities as well in future. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and I totally agree. You know, I think as a council, we really do put the emphasis on that community-led climate and nature work. So yeah, highlighting that in committee and bringing it back to committee is something I definitely support. Yeah, I think, Alex, were you going to come back on that?
Oh, only to say, I had meant to say that it's a national best practice in that nationally people tell you to work in this way, and internationally, I'm sure you're right. But yes, you're right that we should be proud of this, because I think it probably is something that Bristol is at the forefront of, and there has been international interest in it. Yes, and I would love to come back to the committee and say, now we have this project and it has been informed by these plans. I think that would be a wonderful outcome, but it has to have some resource behind it as well, so we'll look at what government funding is coming forth.
Sure, and I'm sure we all recognise that. Thank you. We look forward to hearing more.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, lovely. In which case, we can move to the recommendations. So if everyone's okay, we'll take all the recommendations together. So I'll read them all out, and then I will be asking for a seconder, and then we can vote on them. So the recommendations are that the Environment and Sustainability Policy Committee endorses the community climate investment plans for Eastern and Lawrence Hill, Knoll West and Southmead, and the 17 community climate and nature action plans as a valuable source of insight into these communities' priorities, which could be used in the development of future council strategies, plans, projects or funding applications. Number 2 is that the committee notes that the endorsement of these plans does not constitute Bristol City Council approval for the projects within the plans. And number 3 is that the committee reaffirms Bristol City Council's support for community-led climate action and our ambition to work collaboratively with the relevant communities to help them achieve the priorities of their plans, making connections to our relevant services where these priorities relate to our work, subject to budget availability and affordability, and promote these plans within the One City system to encourage action by city partners. So I would like to move these recommendations. Could I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Okay, let's go with Sue because you spoke first. So Councillor Susan Collar has seconded that. Now could I have votes in favour of the recommendations? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. So I won't do votes against or abstentions because everybody has voted for. So yes, we have voted for those recommendations. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for returning. Brilliant. That moves us on to agenda item 8, which is the One City Clean Rivers Working Group report and action plan. So just for context for everybody, this follows on from the Liberal Democrat Golden Motion, which was called Save Our Rivers, Stopping the Sewage Scandal, and that was approved by full council in November 2024. And one of the commitments of the motion was to establish a working group with key partners, and this report is coming from that working group and includes the action plan that they've been working on. So the report is asking the committee to note the draft of the One City Clean Rivers Working Group report and action plan, and approve the council's continued participation in the working group and delivery of the action plan. So this is also an opportunity for the committee to feed back on that report and the action plan as well, and give our thoughts on it. It is a key decision as it impacts 2 or more wards within the city. And we'll vote on it at the end of the discussion. So over to officers to introduce it. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. And you've introduced the background to it very, very well. I'll just add a little note to that, which was that I think the original motion called on the City Council to kind of create that committee. But what was recognised, or that working group, what was recognised is that there are a number of key partners involved in the water and river environment issues, and that it would be better to establish that arrangement under the One City Environment Board. And so the working group is sitting under that One City Environment Board. It's coming to the committee today now to sort of note that report, and then that report will, and particularly the City Council's contribution to it. So as one of the members of that working group, we are endorsing it as ourselves, and then that report will go to the Environment Board as a whole to be considered and hopefully endorsed, if that makes sense. So it's they're the parent of the working group, and we're endorsing our contribution to it, both in terms of the delivery of actions and the continued participation in it. And I'll just hand over to a colleague, Naomi Chatfield-Smith, who's been part of those discussions in that working group, to outline a bit more of what's in that action plan.
Thank you. Yes, so the working group came together for a number of meetings, and we discussed all of the original topics that were sort of listed in the original motion. And we discussed them in depth, identified opportunities, key challenges, sort of the lay of responsibilities across different organisations in the working group. And we provided an interim update to the One City Environment Board earlier this spring. And the action plan that we've sort of come up with is really cross-cutting across site governance and comms and regulatory elements. So we're hoping to sort of continue the actions in the working group across most of the topics in the original motion, but also extra topics that weren't originally in the motion, but we sort of identified as a group were key to improving and making progress on water quality and pollution issues within the city. So I'm happy to take questions or feedback on what the working group would like to continue doing.
Great, thanks. And I'll just add, I think you noted that a number of partners have noted that actually getting everyone around the table has been a very helpful catalyst and convener to, and so who knows what that might lead to in the future as well.
Thank you very much. Does anybody on the committee have any questions or comments on this one? Yes, Councillor Kent.
Thanks, and thank you for the report. It was very interesting reading. And it sets a good framework, but I wanted to particularly delve a little bit into the report from Wessex Water on their proposals for dealing with the storm overflow, where basically they just pump sewage direct into our rivers. I see it talks about being diluted. It's still untreated sewage going straight into our rivers. And what the report makes clear is that within the city environment, that is the main polluter, except overall regarding rural, from rural overflow, water washing off the fields with chemicals and animal dung in. That is a higher contributor, but within our city, we want to look at how we can reduce greatly the pollution going into our rivers. Now, I'm going to be really selfish here and just talk about Brislington Brook, because it's the river that goes through my ward. And so I saw how much Wessex Water intend to invest over the next 5 years, and that, is a very sizable sum. And so I thought that's really good news. But then reading the report, they say that work is underway on plans for 12 storm overflow improvement schemes across the city. I'm a little unclear if 12 schemes mean 12 outlets or if there's 12 separate schemes with multiple outlets, and I guess some more detail around that. But it said storm overflow improvement works are proposed at Camford Park, Sharhampton, Henleys, Druidswood, and St George. Now, those I'm sure are all really, really needed. The one thing I noticed is Brislington Brook doesn't really go through those areas. And then when we looked at Appendix B, which is the effect on Brislington Brook, we can see it has quite a substantial pollution effect. And I guess my concern is, what plans have Wessex Water got to deal with this issue on Brislington Brook? So I'm being, I'm being very parochial here, but I think I've got every right to do that, given that this year alone, and this is the driest year I think we've ever had. Well, it did start quite wet. That probably doesn't help them, and then it's become very, very dry. But there's 43 hours of sewage has been pumped into Brislington Brook in the outflow, which is 150 metres away from my house. So that's just one of, I think, 6 or 8 that go into Brislington Brook. Now, Brislington Brook is a very, very, when we say river, stream is probably a little bit more accurate. It is quite small, and my worry is just the amount that is going into the brook. And I guess my question is, what plans are we aware that Wessex Water have shared with us for Brislington Brook? So I know it's a long question, but it's a issue very close to my heart and that of my residents. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kent. Yeah, I'm not sure if officers here will have the answers, but thank you.
Let me just reflect on a few of those points. I think just in terms of when we're talking about combined sewer overflows, I think the word pumped is an important distinction, because these are overflow mechanisms where in sewers where there are, as I'm sure you know, there are both foul sewers from toilets and households and also rainwater coming into those things, and that's what causes the flooding of the sewer. And the particularly sort of Victorian era sewers were built with overflows in them that allowed them to discharge to the rivers rather than flooding the homes or property with sewage. And so that's what their purpose originally was. And so it's an overflow rather than a pumping mechanism, I think it's fair to say in most instances, as compared to discharges from sewage works, which I think are a very different proposition. I don't know about the question about the 12 schemes, whether that's 12 overflows and whether Naomi has any more clarity on that. But we can certainly seek that information. And I think on the Brislington Brook plans, I think we can take that away and ask colleagues at Wessex Water to respond specifically, but we may have some headlines that she can share. Obviously, they have been through a process of identifying the kind of priority locations for the interventions they are making, and perhaps if I just describe roughly what those are for benefit of the wider audience, they are essentially building underground tanks which can then, those sewers can overflow into, and then when the storm water has passed and the flows have subsided, that wastewater can be pumped back into the sewer rather than having been overflowed into the river. And so that's what those works, a number of locations are planned to address. But Bislington Brook, any more details?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your points. I think specifically on the 12 schemes, we'd have to ask Wessex for the details, but the couple of points that come to mind, just firstly about just flagging that the South Bristol Streams report that was done by Bristol Avon Rivers Trust on the Bislington Brook and Malago and Collaters is a really good piece of monitoring. So if you haven't read that report, it's quite insightful. And the second bit is about the solutions to the stormwater overflow problem. There's the hard engineering side of trying to do essentially plumbing and sewer upgrades, but also the nature-based solutions side, which is really, really important that across the city through all sorts of land ownership and private and public spheres, we need to be retrofitting sustainable drainage features, which is sort of how we need to work with Wessex on their own plans to deal with the issue, but also supporting with a wider host of solutions that are sort of nature-based, I would say.
Thanks. And perhaps if I just add one other point, is that the planned storm overflow measures they're doing have come out independently of the working group. That's part of their ongoing asset management programme, which is agreed with the regulator and with government about how much they can charge those costs into bills. So it's included in this paper because it's an important intervention and it's allied, but it's not something that's arisen directly as a result of the working group. It's come about by that ongoing regulated asset management process.
Thanks. Just a quick point, and that is my area wasn't built in the Victorian times. Mine was one of the first houses and was built in 1937. We actually have a separated system. My understanding is that the what is supposed to be the surface water system leaks into the sewage system. Well, the sewage system isn't tight enough to keep out rainfall, and that's why it overflows. And that, I think, then opens up another question of what is high rainfall, because the fact we've had 18 separate discharge, I mean, we could use the word discharge. I say pump because the private water industry have known about this for decades and done sod all about it. So I say that there is an intent behind this of Wessex Water decided to put profits first, being one of the most profitable companies in the FTSE 250, and I think it sort of has one of the highest returns of any public company. You know, good to invest in, not so good if you want your water to be nice and clean. But anyway, I will put that aside because I want to be friendly with Wessex Water and see if we can work with them, because they're now talking about investing all this money. I think my issue is it would be really, really good to find out what they're doing about Brislington Brook. It sounds like they have some good plans for other parts of the city. That's good. I realise this won't be instant, but it would be really good to understand that, because we have a real issue with Brislington Brook and there's too much going in. Anyway, thanks for that. If we get a definition of what is high rainfall, because I think their definition and my definition might be different. Ultimately, though, it would be really good actually for us to get a better understanding of the sewage water systems. Maybe at some point, some sort of map could be brought to us showing us where there's combined systems, where there's not, where the outflows are. I mean, this must be something Wessex Water have. It can't be proprietary because they've got no competition. So they don't need to worry about a competitor getting hold of their system. They have the only system. So it would be useful, I think, for us to understand the challenges they face and the public, but that's just a thought for the future. Anyway, thank you. It was a really good report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if that is possible to see that.
What we'll do is, when we ask them for that information, we can pass on an invitation to perhaps brief the committee and members more broadly, potentially, on those issues, and then exactly what that contains we can leave with them. Thank you. And I stand corrected on the only cause of inflow of water into the sewer. Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, no, that sounds like a really good way forward. It'd be great to get some more information on that. Yes, Councillor Collar.
Yeah, I've got several points I want to bring to the committee and anybody who can answer these questions. With regards to the One City Clean Rivers Action Working Group, I'm looking at Appendix A, which is the One City Clean Rivers Working Group, and I've kind of read through it and everything else, and I've got all the way to the bottom, and I've seen no mention of a little stream that I have in Bishopsworth called Pigeon House Stream. Now, Pigeon House Stream comes down from, I'm sort of like Dundry, down through Bishopsworth and places like that. That's from my ward. Oh, does it? Yeah. It is, yeah. Aha. So, my question is back in February, it was reported about a water flow that was coming across and going into the stream, and E. coli was found in the testing after, a range of tests being done by a range of different people. Since that time in February, I've not, as a councillor who've asked questions, not really had full substantive reports back. And I've been in contact with the Environment Agency, Wessex Water, Bristol Water, Bristol City Council. And the most recent update that I had was, you have to mind me because I stood on my glasses this morning. I can't see for nothing. So I had the latest update I've had from Wessex Water and the Environment Agency is that there was an outside chance that it was not a leak from a sewer and a spring was travelling through land which may be contaminated. There's no answers. That we don't know where this water is coming from. We don't know what land is contaminated. I know Bristol City Council have taken their own samples, chemical, metals analysis and all this stuff come back. So they indicate that land contamination is likely to be a concern. But that's as far as it goes. So I know it's been moved into a sewer by Wessex Water, I think, which means it's no longer flowing into the river. But I wonder when was the last time it was tested, and whether or not the path is now open, and whether or not it is safe for people to actually be in that area with their dogs and children, because I don't have a conclusive answer for my residents.
And unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't give you that answer tonight as well, but I know that colleagues have been looking at it. So what I'll do is ask them to come back to you and update you on those details.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
I don't know the details myself.
That is brilliant. Thank you very much. And the other thing is I'm aware of an issue at Ashton Rise. You probably know what I'm talking about with this overflow. And I know structural soils are in on there, and Bristol City Council have been doing lots of work over there. And I know the officer in charge has been up there visiting and everything else. But there's still not like a conclusion to that one either. And I just wondered what the latest update was on that one at Ashton Rise.
I'm sorry, again, I don't have the details. I'm not so involved in the operational activities, but yeah, we'll ask colleagues to feed back to you.
Okay. Finally, I'm really sorry, but we are talking about our environment here. There's also been a lot of construction in the area around sort of South Bristol with a company that has been laying internet cables or something anyway. They've been digging up roads and stuff like that. Anyway, it's been reported quite consistently across that I know the company has been discharged who was doing the work originally, but a lot of their cleaning was put directly into drainage, into drains, and drains were blocked with all sorts of building products and stuff like that. I'm just wondering if when something like that happens, how do we manage that in terms of, because obviously it goes into the sewer, but is there, you know, we've got contaminants from building products blocked and pushing water up. I mean, we're lucky it isn't raining at the moment. But how do we make sure that that kind of thing is cleared out and monitored?
So the most of those road drains that you refer to, that where that's been washed into, they actually don't discharge the sewer. They ultimately discharge to the river, because they in separated systems, because so that sediment is likely to have gone straight into the nearest watercourse. Again, I'm not the Wessex Water, who actually responsible for the surface water sewers, will investigate, and if people see a live incident happening where people are washing anything into the drains, whether it's paint from DIY or plaster from a builder or site runoff more broadly, they will, if it's reported to them, they will actually attend, and they do have powers to take enforcement action against people discharging illegally into their surface water sewer. And we can perhaps in the minutes, we can perhaps add the contact number. I don't have it off the top of my head. One of the key things through the planning system, and this may come up later, is that we do try and put in conditions on building developments, but utilities like fibre optic cable aren't captured by that system, but they should still be following good practice and definitely not doing that. So I think if people do see them and they can report them, then that's the best route for them being then action being taken. But again, we can, if it's an ongoing programme, we will alert Wessex to that if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. That's me.
Thank you. And thanks. Yeah, thank you, Susan. I had Councillor Tate next, and then we'll go on to Councillor Fodor and then Councillor Russell. Thanks.
Mine was just very quickly, like as we're seeing obviously the extreme heat, lots of children when they had their days off of school then went swimming in said rivers, and then ultimately were quite poorly after and needed then time off of school when school opened back up again. And so I suppose, you know, people are going to want to cool down, are going to want to go and use those spaces, and it's just kind of, I just wanted to note it as an issue that I'd like to see included.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Councillor Fodor?
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for all the insight. And I know it's taken a lot of work and it's a certain amount of patience to get this report to us, so I welcome it. And I think it's the partnership approach recognises that that when we had the original motion, and I spoke to the author, and they were happy to say, let's start with the One City Environment Board, because that's where we can get all the right people around the table. This committee couldn't have done it on its own, or our officers on our own, without all the key partners, voluntary, community, and business. So it's paid off, because we've got quite a lot of detail in there, and thanks for bringing it back. As far as it goes, but I'd like to say I hope we'll have more ambition as the work continues over the next 2 years. It's the working group, I'm really glad, isn't just finishing with this, it's going on till 2028, and that's actually really important. We need to find the resources for the issues that haven't yet been prioritised or covered by the motions, like rainwater retention, which is especially important in conditions like this, highway runoff that our own highways are causing, and the traffic on them, construction, silt and pollution, which is something we get casework about. It's getting into our streams in the city. It's coming from developments outside the city frequently, and we need to find ways to make those construction site management agreements sort of tighter and enforced. And then things like microplastics, which is something we discussed a few years ago, and it hasn't gone away. It's getting worse. There's even talk of putting plastics into road surfaces. So the heat waves highlight the need to hold back water, create a sponge city. So I'd like to see kind of how we can take practical steps to make sure that's built into all the changes in Bristol in future as our infrastructure gets updated, as we find ways to invest in our infrastructure, which I know is an enormous challenge. And today we've heard from local children who said, protect our rivers, listen to us and then take action. So I think it's a message for us, again, to keep this work going. And finally, can I suggest that we do ask to get a focus on these additional issues that I've mentioned, like runoff, construction waste, rainwater retention, sponge city issues, microplastics, and get them to come back sometime before 2028 as the work continues, so that it's not just we've dealt with emotion, they've gone away and talked about it, but we know that there is ambition, there is further action, because we know there's lots more to do. But I welcome the work and the partnership, and I really appreciate working with everyone around the table at the One City Environment Board, because I know it's brought a lot of people together. And let's remind them that we hope they don't stop there and that we carry on. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and part of this item coming to committee is about us approving the continuation of the work and our involvement in the work. And so absolutely, I hope it can come back to committee and we can see how it progresses. And yes, there is clearly a lot more to do. I don't know if you have anything to add. No, yeah, but yes, thank you very much.
Could I just highlight, as has been mentioned by Councillor Collier, construction work, whether it's a small builder or a misconnection, because you get someone who plumbs into the drain when they shouldn't, or the big sites that, even if they have separated sewage and drainage, they then combine back into the combined sewers frequently, but they also pour silt during the construction phase. So I hope it's not something that continues to be so weakly regulated. In a way, it is a legacy of the deregulation and the austerity that there hasn't been that attention to keep everyone large and small on the case. And scale was mentioned in the report, and we need to remind everyone, both in our own street doing work or in the big schemes in the city, because they can all make a difference to our health, to our environment, and to flooding and drainage issues.
Thank you, Councillor Fodor. Councillor Russell.
Yeah, I was just going to say something about SUDs as well, sustainable drainage systems, and particularly water butts. I definitely support the idea of SUDs mapping, which is mentioned in the report, particularly on council land. So maybe working with the Parks Department and seeing if they're doing it, where they're able to do it. And I was also wondering if Bristol Waste, I'm waiting for Ken to look up. This is a bit random, it's not your item, but might be able to sell water butts. Like I know on the council website you can buy a compost bin. I wonder if that's something that could also be provided by the council. We can come back to this later.
No. Bristol Waste could, but in reality, they'd have to buy in, and you're better off just going to the market, Amazon or somewhere else, and buying water butts, because you're going to be getting them from a mass wholesaler, and the delivery, if we get Bristol Waste to do that, their delivery costs are going to be higher than a man in a van, and then also their buying power is going to be less. So we could, but what we're finding with compost bins, for it to stack up financially for the council to do that service, we're more expensive than buying them from Lidl or Aldi when they have their aisle days and all of that sort of stuff. So we could promote it, but I think we should focus in on Bristol Waste collecting bins.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it was just an idea. If we could promote water butts to residents, that would be great. And yeah, I'd support the idea of mapping and increasing that.
Thanks very much, Councillor Russell. Yeah, and totally, really good point about water butts being really important. And I know that there have been various schemes with Bristol Water and Wessex Water sort of promoting and even giving out sometimes water butts. I don't know if you can talk more about that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's been discussed in the working group, because there's quite a few successful small-scale projects that have delivered quite a lot of water butts, but we're talking about what's the best approach to upscaling, and also sort of seeing the synergies between the different partners. So Bristol Water, for example, have an interest in funding water efficiency measures, and water butts can be considered a water efficiency measure. And Wessex Water have an interest in trying to better manage rainwater to keep rainwater out of the drainage system. So they would promote water butts that are also kind of leaky, so that they have an overflow into an above ground suds feature before an overflow into the drain to kind of increase that capacity. So we're trying to identify where those, we all have the same sort of interests and how we can work most collaboratively on that, but it's just an ongoing piece of work.
Thank you. And yeah, just for the interest of anyone listening, I know Councillor Russell mentioned it, but SUDs are sustainable urban drainage features. So often they'll show up sort of on highways and things where you've got a concreted area. You might have a little area which is sort of grassed or planted up so that water can actually soak away rather than just running off the concrete straight into the drains. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Oh yeah, one more from Councillor Foder.
Point of information, Chair and Ken. When we increased recycling in the city a few years ago, and then our wheelie bins were made smaller, Bristol Waste made those large wheelie bins available with a little tap on them, but they distributed them through community gardens that are around the city so that we could collect them. So we can reuse old wheelie bins if we shrink our bins and recycle more waste. But obviously that was a one-off. But it used community gardens as a focus for collecting things. And hopefully we can have links like that in future to just get access to things that help us with rainwater collection and reuse and so on.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. Okay, next I will move on to the recommendations. So you can all see the officer recommendations up on the screen. I'll also read them out, and then as before, I'll move them. I'll ask for a seconder, and then we can vote on them, and I'll take them all together. So the recommendations are that the Environment and Sustainability Committee notes the One City Clean Rivers Working Group report and action plan. And number 2, approves Bristol City Council's continued involvement in the working group and participation in the delivery of the action plan. So I will move those recommendations. Could I have a seconder, please? Tim Kent, I saw you first. So Councillor Kent has seconded. And then could I see all votes in favour of the recommendations? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. So we don't need to take votes against or abstentions. Thank you. So we voted for those recommendations. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to agenda item 9, which is related also about rivers. This one is the River Avon Charter. So to give a bit of a context, representatives, both sort of lead councillors and officers from neighbouring councils in the Avon catchment area have been meeting relatively regularly for a number of months now, and that includes councillors and officers from Bath and North East Somerset and also South Gloucestershire Council. And we've been meeting with the campaign group We Are Avon to develop and bring forward this charter. So we've all had a chance to sort of feed into it, and the aim was really to come up with something that all of the councils could get on board with, so that we can have a joined up approach in recognition that the river is something that flows through all of our areas, and so anything that we do to help the river ideally needs all of us on board. Yes, and it's really about sort of recognising the intrinsic value of the River Avon and the other rivers and waterways that feed into it. And it complements a lot of the work that's already happening within Bristol. So we've already got the One City Clean Rivers Working Group, which we've just talked about, and we've very much that came from a motion from this council. We've already a part of the Avon Catchment Partnership. And we've also got our blue-green infrastructure strategy as a city, which we approved recently in this committee. We've got sort of floating wetlands, for example, that are popping up on in our harbour that we've been supporting. So yes, it's, you know, a lot of this work is already happening in Bristol. It's something that we've already demonstrated that we really care about, and this is a way of sort of really bringing that together. So this report is going to provide information for the committee so that we can consider supporting this River Avon Charter. But then, slightly unusually, the recommendation is to refer the Charter onto full council for endorsement because of the recognition that, you know, this impacts the whole council, not just the work that we do within this committee. So yes, passing over to Alex Minchell to introduce it.
Well, I don't think I've actually got anything to add to that introduction, to be frank. I think you've set out it extremely clearly, so I guess we're just very happy to take any questions that members may have.
Great. Yes, Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Chair. I've got no issue with the Charter. I just want a clarification, because I think I raised this when we were talking about agenda. There are several scenarios where I can see that we would not quite intentionally pollute the river, but our actions would lead to pollution in the river that might be unavoidable. And this would be, for example, we've got an awful lot of, should we say, concerns with our various walls that run along the river. And during the course of the repairs to that, we might inadvertently pollute said river. I'm just making sure this doesn't leave us open to any kind of challenge, because we do need to perform those essential repairs for the long-term health of the river itself. Are we absolutely fine if we support this today, that we're not exposing ourselves to anything later on?
Thank you. That's a very good point. Yes, I know a lot of work's been done looking at this.
Yes, I think the endorsement of this doesn't affect any of the City Council's statutory responsibilities, and it's and of course all of those things we might need to do will be subject to permitting processes of some sort, and so those are the ones that would determine whether or not the impacts intended or not were acceptable or not. And one of the big interventions we'll be making in the River Avon is the flood defence schemes that will be needed to protect the city centre, and recognising that the river has rights doesn't infringe the need to develop those flood defence schemes to protect the people and city of Bristol. But I think what it does do is enable, it's recognising that the river isn't just some water, isn't just its banks, it's the whole system. And that systematic approach and a more holistic approach to it will help inform decision making, but should not restrict our ability to do the things we need to do.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next we've got Councillor Dudd.
Yeah, a couple of questions. I fully support the wording there, but just question connected to it. Is there an action plan connected to the Charter? Because I know we've signed up to a lot of charters over the years, and does action flow from it? Excuse the pun. And then secondly, kind of connected to Mark Weston's point, the Harbour Authority legislation is quite strident in terms of the purpose of the harbour is the harbour activity. So is this compliant with our responsibilities as a harbour authority and the statutory obligations we've got there? Because I think they would trump a lot of what's in the Charter.
Thanks. Yeah. So we're not proposing or an action plan to flow from this. It was a good pun. Is being proposed at this point. I think Councillor Finch mentioned that there are a number of strategies and action plans that are already in train, and I think we would seek to incorporate consideration of this into those plans and actions rather than have a separate action plan. So particularly our ecological emergency action plan. So if there are specific things that members think we should be pursuing in response to this, then it would be great to consider adding those into that action plan and think about how we resource that, rather than avoiding another action plan per se. But obviously, if Council were to decide otherwise, then we'll develop such a plan. And I think the legal advice in the document sets out that this doesn't conflict with the other statutory duties of the City Council, such as the Harbour Authority, but there are a number of others. And so that's the basis on which we can advise that there is no such conflict.
Thank you. Yeah, but it's a good point. You know, we don't want this to be. This isn't the end of the road. This is the beginning of something, and that collaboration that's happening with the neighbouring councils that will continue as well. And you know, all councillors here would be welcome to attend those meetings going forwards. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's about integrating this into the work that is happening, rather than have a sort of a separate stream. But we'll see, I guess, with the outcomes of full council as well, and how that moves forward. Thank you. Councillor Fodor is next, and then.
Thanks, Chair. And I think we should be really sort of pleased to recognise the immense work that's gone into developing this charter, working cross-party and cross-authority right the way around the Avon catchment. That's really important. I don't think that's happened to the same extent before, even though there are groups that are working on the river. It's to get whole councils on board, and it's been working its way around the meetings of adjacent authorities, and I hope we'll get it to full council and then support it. We get casework about it. I've also done volunteering, clearing rubbish out the tributaries and the Avon itself, and the children have reminded us that, you know, to not just listen to them, but take action to protect rivers, and so do we need to remember that. But the difference with this charter, I think, is that it suggests that in those meetings that do take place, that do develop those technical and economic and you know, infrastructure projects and protect the city and promote development, that there's a voice for the river, that the thinking isn't trapped in each institutional compartment that says, I only deal with this, you only deal with that, we've only got a remit. And there's a voice in the room saying, remember, the Avon itself, you know, is underpinning our life and supporting our city and our health and our amenity, and it should have a voice in the room. And I think that's what the Charter helps achieve. It says, let's make sure that voice is in the room, not just the people in their silos, dare I say. I know we've got lots of collaborative work and lots of partnership, but it adds that perspective purely from the position of the rivers in the city itself and beyond the city. So to me, it's something well worth supporting, and we've been encouraged, I think, by local young people to remember that and act on things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fodor. Councillor Kent.
Thanks. Very briefly, yeah, I was pleased to join one of the consultation meetings. It was really useful. There were quite a few councillors, as you said, from different authorities, officers, people from various groups. So well done to the organisers of that and for bringing this forward. It's quite an achievement, actually, to bring together a charter. I know this is high-level wording, but to actually get everyone to start to sign up to something, to say, OK, this is the basis of where we all start. This is where, or in fact, the objective where we want to get to. That is not easily achieved. So well done to them for getting this far. I'm more than happy to back the wording. And I think the key thing is this is a long-term approach, isn't it? It's about saying, you know, we know that there are elements within that charter we probably don't completely meet, as is the case with many authorities. But it's about saying, but this is the objective where we're going to get to, and it's recognising that and trying to bring everyone together to work together to protect the Avon, because if we lose our waterways, I mean, we kill more than just what's in the waterways. We literally destroy the whole environment around us. We do need to reverse that. I mean, there was a point where things were looking really, really dire for our waterways, and, you know, we still can save them, and we can see how robust they can be and how quickly they can bounce back if we give them that chance. So, yeah, I'll be more than happy to endorse this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee before we move on to the recommendations? Okay, brilliant. We'll move on to the recommendations. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. So we can see the recommendations on the screen again, but I'll read them out just for clarity. So the recommendations are that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability recognises and supports the aims of the Avon River Charter and refers the Avon River Charter to full council for adoption or endorsement. So I would like to move those recommendations. Could I get a seconder, please? I saw Councillor Fodor's hand first. So, yeah. Councillor Fodor has seconded. And then all votes in favour of the recommendations, please. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. So, yes, approved unanimously. Thank you. And now we will move to a 10-minute break. So if we could come back at 6:33 for the next item, that would be great. Thank you very much. So we will resume the meeting now. So we are moving on to agenda item 10, which is the quarterly performance report for Q4 of the year 2025 to 2026. And so this report is really just an update to committee on the latest quarterly performance measures, and it's for noting, but obviously an opportunity for committee to ask any questions and sort of make any comments on the performance of that quarter. So yes, over to John Smith for an introduction.
Thank you, Chair. Just two things I wanted to say, really. But firstly, to note there has been some positive performance, e.g., in terms of the litter picking participation, the pilot on land and green spaces, being managed for nature, and a number of other items. However, as I suspect the committee would want me to do, I have focused on three more challenging areas. I was just going to say something about those. So firstly, we did, Chair, you introduced this, and Councillor Weston referred to it as well. The number of dropped roads in terms of refuse and recycling is referred to in the paper, as you've said in your introduction. It talks about the position up to the end of the last financial year. The position in the last financial year is very much a game of two halves, I think it's fair to say. There was really challenging performance in the first half of the last financial year, but it must be said Bristol Waste improved significantly in the second half, and in fact were in line with targets for the second half of the year, including a particularly positive Christmas performance, you will recall. So this was obviously all pre the more recent heat-related issues that we've been talking about. And I think I had previously described the position that we'd got to by the end of the last financial year as much improved, particularly around, you recall, in the committee we talked a lot about vehicle availability previously. And that position has been improved by some investment in the existing fleet. We all know about future fleet as well. But I describe it as much improved but fragile. That's probably a fair summary, isn't it? Because I think two things combined. Firstly, as Chair, as you referred to in your introduction at the start of the meeting, the driver shortage issue, I would just say that that is not connected with the heat, really, and is a national issue to do with the competition for drivers, not just for waste and refuse and recycling, but in other areas as well, and pay levels and are struggling to compete, and a number of other waste companies have struggled as well. I would say my view, and we've worked closely, I mean Ken and Pete and myself meet regularly with the Bristol Waste team to talk about these issues, and I would say they have put quite a lot of good work into that to try and address it, as you were referring to. It's not robust enough, as Councillor Weston robustly pointed out, but they have had some success in recruiting in quite a difficult market, and I think they will continue to make progress there. So much more to do, and rest assured, Ken and Pete and I and the company do understand just how important the service is to people. It's the one council service that goes to everyone's house every week. We absolutely get that, and particularly in hot weather, how impactful it is. So we will keep working as hard as we can. In terms of fly tipping, I wanted to just, again, it's a bit of a summary of conversation we've already had, Chair, isn't it, really? But as you will recall, in the budget which was approved in February, additional investment is going in to try and bring further improvements there, and I think we're hopeful, Ken, aren't we, that will see some improvements? Go ahead.
Yes, so on fly tipping, members rightly pointed out that the metric is a bit counterintuitive because it's decreased the number of fly tips removed. So actually, we want that is going to be renamed going forward. And actually, if you look at the target, we've actually increased the number of fly tips that were reported have been removed, and we'll probably do tweak it and get approval from you. So maybe at the next committee we just tweak that as a KPI. On the collections, because there was a clarification about trying to to compare last year's performance with the year before. Now, the year before, which as members will rightly know, was rather painful and went on for a long, sort of a 15-month period. In the last financial year, so 24-25, 39,000 roads were dropped. So Bristol Waste, from that service, have reduced it to a quarter of what it was. And if you take the first quarter of this financial year, they taking up to the end of June, not including the July, they have dropped around 1,900 roads. So the performance is improving. It's just, unfortunately, because of the way we trial to deal with the red heat weather and the resourcing, and also the underlying thing that's also happened, which is a good news story, is we are actually collecting more recycling now. So our average tonnage for dry mix recycling was 400 tonnes last year, 401 tonnes last year. This year, so in the red weather heat warnings, and I can only, and I hate to say this, link it a little bit maybe to the football or lots of barbecues and entertaining, but we saw in June, we saw 500, the first week 500 tonnes, second week 581 tonnes, third week 600 tonnes, and then reduced down to 450 and 495. So we've seen that the red weather period couldn't sort of conflated with actually quite a large increase in demand. So we had two things collide, which is led to the challenges of us trying to catch up.
And I know members will want to come in, Chair, so I'll just finish off with one final thing. In terms of emissions of CO2 and the heat network, direct emissions by the council that is, and the heat network, we had obviously a discussion at the last meeting, and Chair, you've asked us to look into particularly the issue about reporting, and we have been doing some work on that, and we will come back and update the committee on that in due course. We've also been working hard with City of Leap to try and bring improvements in those areas. We had a strategy away day earlier this month, and I think again we've got a new team on our side, a new team on Bristol City Leap's team as well in a number of areas, and they're working very constructively. So we will report back to the committee on how we're getting on.
Brilliant, thanks. That's really good to hear, and I know that those reports from Bristol City Leap are something the committee has been keen to get in the past. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. We'll go Councillor Kent, then Crawford, then Weston, then Dudd. Thank you.
I'll keep mine limited to two, because I'm sure some of my colleagues probably want to talk about similar things. So just number one, on the issue of the bins, we all know the service, despite the issues we face, has not been acceptable. Can I ask that we actually have some of the senior directors of Bristol Waste come to our next meeting to explain to us what they're doing to make sure we don't face this again? I think sometimes we're a bit unfair. We give Ken all of our grief, and for once I want to let Ken off the hook and actually direct it to the directors of Bristol Waste. Is that something we could reasonably do?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I guess obviously Ken's role is to be our bridge to Bristol Waste. But yeah, I mean, it would be...
I mean, I could spoil it and tell you what they're doing and describe it for you if you'd like. There was an email I sent round to a number of rather impacted councillors, which I could sort of pull out some of the main impacts.
Yeah, well, do you want to give us some of the updates? But I think it's something actually we do need to do, because ultimately we're responsible as a committee for the provision. We're not responsible for the finances, but the provision, and it's not been good enough. So I think, you know, in future they should come here and explain. But for now, I'll be more than happy to take an update from Ken.
Thank you. No, thank you for that suggestion. I mean, I'm happy for that to happen, and I appreciate it might not be something that can happen very regularly, but it would be really good to hear directly from Bristol Waste if that can be arranged. If that's something you can take away, that would be great.
It can be arranged. Yeah. Okay.
Shall I just give my second point then, or question, which is fly tipping. which is Ken's favourite thing. Now, normally at this point, I turn my iPad around and I give us Ken's slideshow of all the missed fly tips. But wonderfully, on Tuesday, most of them got collected. So my stuff is not here for you, Ken, to show to you. But it does bring up a serious problem because some of them have been there for 9 weeks. Now, this was predominantly in Parks land. I think this is the problem. As residents, I've got to say, as a councillor, I don't care which department lays claim to that land. I just want the fly tipping gone. And we give out this 3-day target, but we know actually really it's only for highway land and not for anything else. But again, quite rightly, the Bristol public don't care about that, nor do I. I want the fly tipping gone. I mean, I want the fly tippers to be stopped as well, but at the same time, I want it to be cleaned up. And I think this is a severe problem that we have different elements of the council trying to fix this. And I know we've got a working group, we've got to bring this together. And we've got to solve this issue once and for all. And I got a reasonable explanation from Parks that they're dealing with far more fly tipping than they had before, and they've got no extra resources. That is a fair point, and that's something else we need to look at, which is the resourcing across the council on this. But it's something we've got to deal with. So rather than a specific, Ken, these are ones that have been missed in my ward, at this time, be pleased, I'm not going to do that. There are a couple out there that haven't been cleared, but the vast majority of the really bad ones have gone. But it's taken many, many weeks of chasing Parks in particular. And I just think that's not good enough for the public. And one other thing on Fix My Street, one problem which does keep coming about is people reporting fly tipping and getting back. This isn't like either council land or something for Bristol Waste to deal with. Well, it is council land. Whether it is Bristol Waste not to deal with, that doesn't matter. As a member of the public, we just want the fly tipping removed. So I think that's something we need to look at, because Fix My Street clearly is still having teething problems. It's not Fix My Street, it's how we're replying via Fix My Street is the problem. That's something we also need to look at. Thank you.
So with the highway estate and the HRA estate, which were the two main land types, parcels in the council, we are offering the HRA estate a 72-hour fly tip removal service, and obviously on the highway is 72 hours. So between the bulk of the city is done within 72 hours. The closing of reports around that, saying it's not their responsibility, I will take away and address with Bristol Waste, because that is an ongoing issue, which is probably a staff education point, which we'll take away. I do know that Parks are aware of the resource issue and have put forward something for next year's budget to try and provide a thing. I mean, John, is that like that's been put forward, so they're looking at a long-term solution for it, which would be something to go through and, for next year. So, and as part of the contract, we are looking at how Bristol Waste could service part of the Parks estate, which is not parks but green spaces, which could easily be collected from the highway. Because if we could do that, then Parks can focus on their main areas of intense use, which is parks. So there is a bit of collaboration going on as well to try and address those problems. Because you're right, Fix My Street has been great. It's improved a lot of reporting and all of that sort of stuff, but it gives greater transparency and accountability, and we're trying to catch up with those new requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I realised that I said that James could go next, but actually Mark Weston had your hand up. Okay, thank you. That's very gracious. Yeah, James Crawford.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I've kind of got one question, but a couple of comments as well. There are some good news stories in here that I just wanted to flag as well, and I'm hoping that some of these upward trends, particularly in the waste service, do come up. It would be great to see if we see that increasing trend in recycling. Hopefully it's not just people drinking more beer during the World Cup, and it's actually more people choosing to recycle, choosing to make use of that service. So hopefully long it may continue. Also, getting citizens involved in community clear-ups for a quarter, that's really good news. And hopefully we'll see that one I think you're right, Ken. I think it'd be really good to look at that KPI on the fly tipping. I think it's only telling one half of that story as well. Especially, there are some areas of the city where you're getting a lot of fly tips cleared, and it's just the scale of fly tipping that's happening that's causing a real challenge, especially around the kind of Stapleton Road area, which you're obviously very familiar with. The question that I've got for you, and it's to do with the drop roads, as you might expect. So I think I know you can't control the weather, and some of the challenges were unforeseen as well. So part of the story that the KPI doesn't show, though, is that you get in terms of drop roads, because it's often the Thursday and the Friday collections, you get a kind of compounding effect in the same areas of the city, which I think Mark mentioned earlier. I think the worst in my ward hit 5 weeks because their road was resurfaced the week before the red heat alert, and so they had 5 weeks with no collections, which is absolutely brutal, and I feel very bad for them. My question to you is, in terms of kind of policy and operational, in an ideal world, we wouldn't like to see any pain when it comes to drop roads, but is there a way of spreading the pain so that the same roads and the same areas aren't consistently being dropped when we do come across these operational issues? As I said, in an ideal world, we wouldn't have to worry about it, but it's just, is there a way that we can look at that?
So part of the challenge is, in some ways, some of your area, Redland, like there is a lot of narrow roads, narrow access, and there's access issues. And if the crew can't get in there at the first attempt, they'll try twice in a day to get access, and then they'll go back the next day. Because if a drop road occurs, it should be collected the next day. When we get in sort of the cycle that we got into following the red weather day, the red weather plan was based on the Queen's funeral plan, which was we didn't collect the dry recycling, we just did refuse on the bank holiday, and we collected a double amount the next day. Now that the next week, and that worked. And that worked because it was one day. In retrospect, it worked because it was only one day, and it was in September when it wasn't boiling hot. The challenge we had with the plan that we put in place was Bristol Waste went out and they collected all the refuse, all the recycling, collected food waste from all the properties on those red days, so the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the refuse were all cleared. The rest of the recycling was left. Now, if there were incidences like that road that was resurfaced and then they couldn't get access because of that, there will be individual roads that are a problem, and we have a long-term solution about trying to get TROs for those properties to give greater access. And we are buying smaller vehicles and also looking at buying smaller recycling vehicles, which we've already approved and ordered, and also smaller refuse trucks going forward. So there's lots of long-term solutions to different problems. When you get in a bit of a cycle around the drop roads, ideally, we didn't want to be in a situation that the next week we had more recycling to collect, we had some operational issues with staff going off with heat exhaustion and some issues, and then the compounded impact on that Thursday and Friday was, the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, was it spilled from the start of the week onto those days, and then the following week, the amount of work we had outstanding, which I think was 3 days, we said, right, no, we can't cope with that. We're going to sacrifice garden waste for one collection on 2 weeks to redeploy the drivers and the crew onto those fleets. So we've got 5 extra rounds going out to try and catch up. Now that week we undertook that work. We did catch up. Well, we caught up over a 2-week period, which was what we envisaged to do. But the challenge was that we had nearly 600 tonnes of recycling caught up in that second week, or the third week, and it really meant that the service at the end of the week kept on flowing on to the following week. Now, the point you asked was, if we are going to face one-off issues, so we've got 2 vehicles break down on a Wednesday or a Thursday, we will look at where agilely the team and myself, well, if it's big, we'll have a discussion around where is most hit. Let's keep those crews going here because they've suffered quite a lot of miscollections or dropped roads. Let's redeploy the round over here to there because then that will spread some of the service disruption around. And those decisions do happen because you do get that. But the nuance, and Councillor Kent pointed out, is when you try to spread some of the service disruption and you take a driver that's used to driving around, say, all of Redland or all of Whitchurch and everything, you end up with some of the local knowledge loss. So there may be a rear alley that needs to be serviced and the driver doesn't necessarily have all of that knowledge, so they end up being missed. And that's where you get some unforeseen sort of consequences of trying to do the best thing. You end up with some people still having a poor service. Now, we took decisions on how to do the catch-up, and it didn't work after the red weather days, and we are learning, and we're going to retain some of our fleet, so we've got more vehicles to deploy, because Councillor Weston said earlier, at Christmas, we catch up. Over this red weather warning, we didn't catch up. The difference is we have 10 weeks, we take 10 weeks or 12 weeks to prepare for Christmas, so we get extra drivers in, we get hire extra vehicles in, and we can plan for extra recycling, extra pressure, and we do everything in that regard. And we thought we could do it with existing resources this time with regarding red weather, and we couldn't. So what we're looking to do, extra vehicles are very hard to just book in off the shelf because you have to do all the HGV checks before you deploy them. So you could get them in the next day, but actually by the time you've done the checks, really, they're only available 2 days' time. So by that time, you've missed 2 days of collections. So if we retain some RCVs, if we, in the next fleet, when we renew our fleet, this time next year, if we retain some fleet vehicles, we'll have more of a float so that we can deploy more vehicles and commingle recycling and then separate it back at the depot. Or we can have people go around, pick up cardboard because that's the most volume material. And also where, fingers crossed, the new vehicle fleet that you all sort of supported and we're purchasing on the recycling side has far greater capacity than the current fleet. So we might have more inherent capacity to deal with some of these challenges in the future as well. So there is a lot that we've learned from this, and I was part of the decision making around how we responded to the red weather warning, and in future we're going to do it a lot different. So hopefully that answered it.
No, that was a very good answer off the cuff, Ken. So thank you very much. It just goes to show as well, like, for me personally, I never would have considered that climate change would have disrupted waste collection, just not on the top 10. So, but it's such a key service to the city, and getting planning in for these emergency situations is just going to become more and more vital over the future. So yeah, well done, and all credit to you and the waste crews for doing your best. It's a very, very challenging situations.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Councillor Weston.
Thank you. Sorry, Ken, I like you a lot, but I don't agree with what you just said there. You didn't catch back up. The waste company did not catch back up in Brentry. What you did was just skip an entire week. But in the meantime, what you did was cover me in manure and outright lie to me during that time. So I was repeatedly told, I had an emergency meeting with the waste company on the Friday. They said the crews will be out on Saturday, Sunday, and by the latest, that they will collect Brentry on Monday. No, they didn't. They collected Brentry on the Wednesday. Still didn't catch back up. And then what then happened is you just skipped. We then had a whole period of about 11 days where no one collected anything in Brentry. And no one told us what was going on. So it's complete cock-up. So I'm afraid whatever you were told, it does not match the reality in Brentry at all. And in the end, I had to put out a statement going, you know, this is the latest. Pfft, I have no idea if it's true. To put me in a situation where I am the mouthpiece of the waste company trying to assure people we're going back out, we're going back out, back out. And in the end, I have to go, you know what, guys, this is the latest, I have no idea. Fingers in the air, good luck. Is ridiculous. So anyway, it is what it is, but we can't be in that situation. And by the end of this, the communications were better. But to basically make me your political flak jacket, I'm a big guy, but there's only so much I'm willing to take. But rant over on the comments on the KPIs. If I take it back to that. We talk about the flight at removing waste from the highways. I think this has already been touched on. I would say that in some areas, mine would probably be the same. Tim's probably got the same, where you actually have a blend of whether it's park, housing, or highways land. You know, I keep reporting the same 2 very beautiful mattresses. And it took about 6 weeks for them to get removed because there was a dispute over whether it was parks. And in the end, you're almost looking at the land registry document going, no, it definitely is housing land, therefore you can cover it. So I think someone needs to look at that. Possibly that's a suburb-only issue. I don't imagine they're quite the same in Redland, but flag that. But when it comes to drop roads, I think this is underreporting it by a severe margin because what you often have is a partial drop road. And this was a massive thing during the heat wave, but actually we see this a lot where you might come out and you'll collect the cardboard or plastic and not take the brown. And then when I go, oh, but you've not done a full collection, they go, oh, well, it's picked up as collected. Well, actually, you've got a partial drop road, and it's very hard for anyone to report that. So I flagged those 2, but I'm sorry, on the heat wave. Don't agree with what you said. Oh, and one final thing. My good colleague said, how do we spread the pain? In Liverpool, where I'm from, so go Everton, what they do is they actually rotate who has the Friday collection. So on New Year, everyone takes a turn. So if you're Friday, you go to Monday, Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, and it bounces through. Because invariably what happens is if there's any delay, it's the Friday that gets hammered. So that's Southmead, Brentry, Clifton, and all the rest of it. And actually what they do is they rotate it. So every 5 years, someone takes a turn at being the tail end Charlie. Just flag that as an option.
No, that's fine. And, you know, I was part of the decision making when it came to the response to the red weather warning and then the heat wave, and take responsibility and apologise for the fact that it didn't work. I think the communications definitely can be improved, and we are working on that, and Bristol Waste want to work on that because we shouldn't be putting you in the middle. We should be going direct, or I should be going direct, or the council should be going direct to the resident saying, sorry, your road's missed, and firing out the information that they need. And there are plans afoot with that, and we are exploring other routes as well.
Just say, I don't mind being in the middle, but what I'm told needs to be accurate.
Yeah. And I think when you're dealing with operations, your plan. So if I brief you at 4 o'clock today, not now, but I've got a plan for tomorrow morning, but the challenge is that you've got what happens when everyone turns up or when the vehicles go on the road in that morning can derail that plan, and it can derail it even. And so I think the challenge when you're trying to get the collection service working and catching up, that's when the communication then breaks, because you will have been told a plan, but you weren't updated with the plan, because the plan's just getting updated and mobilised. And so you're updating you as someone who's been informed about what the plan is an afterthought that can quite easily not happen. And that didn't happen for you. And so you were left saying things that didn't work. So I think that is what we're looking to try and improve, so that relying on communicating with you is removed, as in relying on that extra step. It should go straight, and then you can be informed as part of that.
Just one final thing, then I promise I'll shut up. I understand that. I'm from a military family. There's a military anachronism that no plan survives contact with the enemy. I totally get that. But all of us are councillors. We basically work almost every day. if the drivers don't turn up on the Saturday or the Sunday, and someone had emailed and said, Mark, it's not going to be Monday, it looks like it might be Tuesday, then I can say something. I can say to my residents, you know what, actually bring in your recycling, it's going to be Tuesday they collected it. Instead, it just sits out in the road, gets pulled apart by the animals, blown everywhere, upturned because we have some delightful individuals in our ward. I just need the information.
No, well, we totally agree, and it's not where we want it.
Thank you, yeah, and thank you for raising those issues. Yeah, Councillor Judd.
That's right. Yeah, thanks, Ken. Yeah, I've just got a point about the workforce planning elements of this. So I think part of the problem is a driver shortage issue, isn't it? And we're in quite a competitive market at the moment, and other companies are offering signing on bonuses of several £1,000s, and just wondered how the waste company is responding to that, and do we have to look at the pay in terms of what we're offering at the moment and respond to that?
So I think I'll say as much as I can, because like pay negotiations would be, I suppose, confidential, and we can't predicate them in any way or prejudice them in any way. But certainly the way that negotiations happen, they happen after the 1st of April. So if you're at another competitor and the rates go up by 4% and ours don't go up until the negotiation occurs, there's an edifice where they're 4% lower than a competitor. I'm using 4% because it sounds big. It could be 5%, it could be 2%. But immediately the pay looks different, quite, you know, so why would you come to Bristol Waste if it's looking less than a competitor in the city or around a neighbouring authority? So that does impact. Also, the way that Bristol Waste advertised the roles and the packages didn't really work, and they've reviewed that, and actually they've improved the way that it's advertised, and that works better now. And then ultimately, like, Bristol Waste that negotiation has to go through and get agreed, and then that'll be reflected, and maybe we look at, the pay negotiation bit's pretty tricky, but certainly the way they advertise is one thing. Agency is also the other thing. The agency rates have all gone up, and they went up by £2 an hour in one area, and then Bristol Waste aren't paying the £2 an hour, so then they lost all the agency to another place because they could get an extra £2. So that's tricky when you're dealing with the public purse. And it's one of those things that we are going to be reviewing this summer about how that needs to work. And John will be included within some of that reviews, because it does impact on the services.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And then just finally on the fly tipping issue, I notice we very rarely get any information here on enforcement, so we only ever really see like one side of the picture. I just wondered if there's any plans to bring a report on enforcement activity to this committee, just so we can scrutinise that and make sure that we're kind of optimising that in terms of where we're putting our resources. Because I can't remember anything coming on enforcement to this committee.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't think it is planned to actually bring a report on enforcement. It is obviously something that we'll be looking at within the Task and Finish group. But yeah, I think potentially that would be useful. Ken?
So I suppose the KPIs that you see are the KPIs that are part of the council's business plan and the council's strategy, and they're approved, and delegate authority have signed off on what levels they go to. We do obviously collate how the enforcement team are doing, so we could bring that as an information note at a later date for you, so you can see what sort of activities are being undertaken. We did discuss enforcement and the activity as part of the January Golden Motion review, and we will be as part of the Task and Finish group. So it's one of those things that we can give you visibility of that if you wish, and I don't see a problem with that.
Thank you. Next we've got Councillor Collar.
it just coming back to what Kai was saying about the levels of employment within the company for drivers, but also for operatives that are managing. Obviously, we have a quite substantial element of NEAT within Bristol. So my question is if we are having difficulties recruiting for drivers or for operatives into the company for whatever reason, would it be, is it something that you do where you reach out to young people? Because when I see the binmen out there collecting, they tend to be older. We don't seem to have any young people applying for those jobs. Is there something that we can be offering in terms of training and driving licenses, opportunities? Do we have a recruitment officer? Are they going to job fairs? Those sort of things, all those sorts of things that, you know, a lot of companies are doing to kind of outsource and get out there in communities and be offering opportunities to young people in those areas.
Yeah, really good question and a nice one, so thanks. What I would say is definitely, like, one of the things that we're looking at for social value for Bristol Waste is how they recruit from diverse population or needs, and as such, you know, one of the things that we would, Bristol Waste, I know, we're looking at sort of strengthening is if you get young people in as operatives who may not have a HGV licence, they come in, they work for the company, they can then move on up to become a driver, and then they could get trained through Bristol Waste to be part, and then they're sort of building a new generation of workforce, because that's what happened many moons ago, you know, from this, like you said, the 90s and noughties, like the drivers have stayed on since then, and you get more loyalty that way. So yeah, definitely there's an opportunity there, and that's one of the things we want to try and encourage Bristol Waste to be doing with sort of social value as much as anything, you know, apprenticeships, all of that sort of thing. That's offers a real benefit to the city.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for that suggestion. I've got someone else before you, Councillor Tate. So yeah, it's Councillor Food and then Councillor Tate. But before you come in, I just want to flag that we do need to leave the building at 8 o'clock, and we've got 2 more items on the agenda. So if this goes on for much longer, we might need to consider deferring one of the other items. So just to flag that. But I know this is an important thing to discuss. But yeah, just wanted to flag that. Councillor Fodor.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to take more time. Ken Lawson actually mentioned it once I was put my hand up. We had quite a detailed enforcement report in the papers and appendices in a few months ago in January, he said. So we did look at that. It wasn't the whole focus of it, that's all. But I'm sure we'll see it again when we go into the task and finish group.
Thanks very much. Councillor Tate.
I just wanted to follow on from Sue's to say it's called United Bristol. So there's some funding that's come down to support over 1,000 young people. So I'd really encourage Bristol Waste to go away and look at how they can be involved in that scheme.
Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that suggestion. So if it's okay with everybody, I suggest we now move on to the recommendations just to keep ourselves moving. But yeah, thank you for that. And yes, it was really good to sort of delve into some of the issues of the last few weeks in particular, even though that falls outside of this quarter. But yes, so the recommendation is on the screen, and it is that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability notes the Performance Progress Report. So can I take that as noted? Thank you very much. That is noted. So now moving on to agenda item 11, we've got the Outturn Finance Forecast Report for the P12 period from the financial year 2025 to 2026. Yes, so John Smith, if you can introduce that report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the financial outturn report, as you said. It's as councillors will see, there's included within the pack is the provisional outturn report that went to Strategy and Resources Policy Committee Chairs Group. I'm focusing on the general fund for the purposes of this update. The revenue outturn for the council as a whole was a small underspend of 0.2 million for the last financial year, and the capital programme Outturn was 282 million. This is for growth and regeneration overall, against a budget of 347 million, which was an underspend of 64 million. Specifically on environment and sustainability, there was an overspend of 1.1 million, driven primarily by the energy pressure of 0.8 million, and also a 0.3 million pressure in terms of the income in terms of street scene and not meeting the target. There was also a small underspend in the sustainable city and climate change team. So the position, energy costs and the pressures on that remains challenging. So we've been looking at what's the best way to look at that. And as you know, we've been pursuing for a little while now this innovative approach linked to our sleeve pool procurement. That is progressing. We should have an update on that fairly soon. I think we'll be having some responses next month, and we'll bring an update to the committee when we've got that. So that was all I was going to say by the way of introduction.
Brilliant, thanks very much. And this is another report for noting, but obviously now is the time for questions and discussion. Yes, Councillor Fodor first.
Sure. Chair, it's not the detail of the report, it's what we've got in front of us. I just want to express my frustration both for councillors but also anyone in the public who wants to see what this committee's been doing, because about 90% of the documents on this item are not about this committee. If we could just have the bits that relate to committee and a bit of translation to put it in plain English, what the columns and the pluses and minuses and brackets and red bits mean, then we could understand our budget better, and I think other people could as well. I know there was an intention to simplify it and have generic reports, but I don't think they work very well for either us or the public, because we're having to search for the odd paragraph that's actually about our committee and then understand the sort of way the accounts are framed, and not everyone will understand that. So just get that one, flag that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for raising that. And yes, totally agree that them being accessible is really important. And yeah, let's sort of look at that for next time, how we can improve that. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Okay, lovely. Was that, no, that's not a hand. Okay, in which case we can move to noting the report. So the recommendation is shown on the screen again, and it is that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability notes the content of the report on the period 12 outturn forecast. Is everyone happy to note that? Lovely, that report is noted. Well, we're definitely back on track now then, and on to the final item of our agenda, which is agenda item 12 on the Albert Road depot. So this is providing an update on the Albert Road depot relocation process following the request that was made at the Environment and Sustainability Committee on the 4th of February. And it's just for information. The members of the committee have already had a briefing, because a lot of the information sort of surrounding this report is commercially sensitive and not able to come to a public committee. So we have had that briefing session and an opportunity for members to discuss already. But yes, we can always move into exempt session if members want to discuss areas of the relocation plans which we can't discuss in public. So that is an option for today as well. So over to Ken to introduce the report. Thank you, Ken.
Yes, so I'll keep it concise. This report outlines the need for replacement of the Albert Road depot, which is Bristol Waste's main waste refuse and recycling collection depot. And it's situated in St Philip's Marsh and is part of the area which is down as the Temple Quarter Regeneration Phase 2. As we're aware of this, and waste is one of those things that no one wants to be built next to them, we are ahead of the Temple Quarter Phase 2 business plan, which is due to be approved the end of this year. We are undertaking lots of surveys and assessments to find the most optimal locations for a waste depot. or waste depots. And we have taken into consideration vehicle movements because we want to be able to get to all the houses in the most efficient way and back. And also we want to make sure that it's minimal impact on residents living in the city. So you don't want it next to houses, you want it on a strategic road network, and you want it with easy access to the strategic road network, because you don't want it driving past schools or residential housing before they get out and distribute around the city. So with all that in mind, we've undertaken both of those sorts of surveys. We've scored a lot of industrial estate in the city, certainly in the city centre, and we are now in the phase of looking at the operational deliverability of some of the land banks. And we will be, the whole process we envisage certainly will be a 3 to 5 year period, and to hopefully have a new depot to move into, and that will be costed when we are able to know what the purchase price of a site is and the full construction costs.
Thanks very much. So any questions or comments from committee? And obviously mindful that some of them might mean we have to move into exempt session. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's quite a quick one. The Office of Recommendation says to note the report, but it says there's a capital cost of 400k on page 360, which is not in the exempt. I was just wondering, is that 400k already secured? Has that been approved elsewhere? Is that, if we're not approving that capital spend now?
Not approving that capital spend now, that is capital that we've put aside for this financial year, next financial year, for planning and preparatory works for enabling the purchase of a site.
Okay, cool, thanks.
And that was agreed in this year's budget, wasn't it? It's already been agreed.
Formally signed up in this year's budget.
Thanks. Councillor Dudd.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Ken, and the briefing. Was it last week or the week before? So I can see a lot of work's gone into this. Just a question on the time frame, really. So I note that we're kind of potentially waiting on the Temple Quarter team to act before we act. Is there any risk that we might miss out on an opportunity if we're waiting on their time frame rather than kind of acting on what we need to do now?
I suppose we are assessing sites and we are looking at the open market in 2 locations, and if we see a suitable site to be developed, we could take that forward to the senior management within BCC at risk, or we could talk to the Temple Quarter team. We also could potentially talk to WECA for funding around this sort of thing, because it's certainly a city strategic asset, and there is a risk, but there's a risk if we buy something and then we have no money to develop it, then we've got a bigger risk. We do need the Albert Road site to be part of the regeneration and compensatory package. So,
did you have a follow-up? Or? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee on this one? No. Okay. Thank you very much. So then we will move on to the recommendation, which is to note the report. It's on the screen, but I'll read it out again. So the recommendation is that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability notes the report. So can I take that as noted? Thank you very much. That report is noted. And that is the end of the meeting. That's the last item. So thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you for everybody who attended in the public gallery and who has been watching online. The next meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Policy Committee is on the 24th of September 2026 at 5 p.m. Thank you. That's the end of the meeting.